This is Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com and then all of the other places where you can stream live. And today's going to be a really fun show. I think it's a really special show. I'm excited about it. We have Michelle Barone on, who is the founder of Emotional Liberation. And then we also have my friend and former client, Jen Redding, on. I keep calling you Jen because is it Jen or do you prefer Jen or Jennifer?
Everyone always says Jen, so I just let it roll.
Do you know, it's funny because the whole time we were working together, it was always Jennifer. I was very clear about it because I wasn't told any other way. But then now I have my friend who's doing marketing for me, and she's Jen, and so now it's just habit.
I know. I tell people say Jen just because it's easy. And it just rolls off the tongue easier.
Anyway, so this is going to be a lot of fun. So I think that probably I'm going to let the two of them give their history and then why we're bringing it all together and why this is going to be such a really fun show. So we'll skip that part first, and then we're going to go straight into what we're grateful for, because gratitude can change the world. I fully believe it. There's a lot for us to be grateful for. And no matter how the election outcome was for you, there's still so much to be grateful for. So, Michelle, what are you grateful for?
I am grateful for being in the space that I am, the work that I've done. I know that sounds a bit selfish, but if I had not done the work for myself, I wouldn't be able to help others. And I feel that gratitude, like you, just like you said, gratitude is so important. And if I had not been able to allow myself to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to get the coaching that I needed, I wouldn't therefore be able to pay it forward and bring people to help people on their journey.
Yeah. I don't think that's selfish at all. And one of the things that we talk a lot on this show about is the shit that we go through is what helps us in moving forward. It's what helps us grow. It's what helps us be better. Everybody I bring on this show is people who I know are here to serve and to love and to give and they've all had their own stuff they've had to go through for the most part. I think that's just life, right? That's how it is. Right. And so it's not selfish. In order for us to do the things that God put us here to do, you got to feel good. You got to be well mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, right? And we have our ups and downs and all of those things. But anyway, thank you for that, because it's a big deal. It's why you're here now, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Jen, what are you grateful for?
Man, it's hard to narrow it down. I think I'm grateful for a lot of things in my past, but I have to touch on recent. I've been grateful about, there's been a lot of opportunities I think I've been given recently, and my spouse and I both say when you're kind of open to receive all those positive opportunities, they kind of just keep going and rolling. And so, I'm really grateful for being able to have these opportunities present and being able to jump in and I guess, be able to dive into the things that I love, because I think, as we talked about our past, I think it's brought us to where we are today. So being thankful for that as well and grateful for that has actually turned into a beautiful thing.
So do you want to, are you willing to say who and what you're doing? Because I think it's super freaking cool.
Of course. Yeah, I'm sure they'd be thrilled. So I am going to be working as a research analyst with Heart and Soil. For those who don't know who they are organ-based supplementation and animal-based supplementation. So it's really cool. They look at the kind of the whole picture and the whole animal, and so they try to derive a lot of crucial vitamins and minerals from organ-based supplements. So I found out about them, I would say probably about a year ago, and then they have a protein powder and so forth, and I looked into that, found out that they're here in Austin, reached out and just said, hey, I really like what you do, and this is what I do. Can we work together? And they responded well to it. So yeah, I'll be starting officially in December. We just have a holiday lull right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's just my heart. It's really, and I'll say just briefly, when we first met, you had so much going on and you were so sick and so frustrated, and we'll dig into that. But to see where you are and then the trajectory of where you're going and moving into, deep, health and wellness and, organs. These are the things that we don't get enough of and that we've forgotten about, and maybe one of the most important things that we could do for ourselves.
Yeah.
I hate liver. I'm not going to eat it, but I'll supplement it all day long.
Yeah, I work at this company. I should say I love liver and I serve it up to myself all the time, but no, I don't.
Yeah.
And that's why I work for a supplement company that does.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. The things that we're supposed to do, like, okay, I don't have the palate, but I'll supplement. There was a thing that I could do. It still was a little bit tough, but you can buy liver, freeze it, and then just cut off little pellets of it. And that way, you're just kind of swallowing it like a pill.
Throw it down the hatch.
Yeah. Doesn't always work, because then you're like, oh, holy smokes, I tasted that. That was awful. It's just raw liver, right? Anyway.
I've done that with raw garlic, too.
Yeah.
I still feel it on the way down.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say what I am exceptionally grateful for is we're in a place right now, what I see, and I'm so excited about, is a turning point for our health. We have just moved into a place where we have people like RFK. I talked a little bit about this last week, but we've got RFK, who's going to make a big freaking difference for us in our health.
Huge.
We have Casey and Callie Means. We have, the Mark Hymans of the world. We have all of these people who are now have the ability to speak loudly and speak clearly about where we are as a society, how we are so duped as far as our health is concerned, as far as the trash that's put in our food, that the stuff that we're eating, that we're duped when it comes to what we should determine what we put in our bodies and what we don't put in our bodies. And the fact that this is such a high priority for this administration, the people who are coming into this administration, it's a little bit beyond me how we don't understand how this is a good thing, and people are so flared up about it, which I get. Your candidate doesn't win, that's okay. You can be flared about it, it's fine. And I don't know where you two stand, and my goal is not a political conversation. It really is outside of the politics of it. We have people who are making it very clear that things need to change as far as our health is concerned, as far as our healthcare system is concerned, as far as our insurance system is concerned, about big pharma, big money, big ag, all of this trash that's just making us unhealthy. And so I am elated that this is such a big push for those who are in politics and outside of politics and who have the voice to say it. I'm just a little person kind of sitting here doing, reaching a few people at a time, which is cool. We're hitting 250,000 people, give or take, but we got to have all the voices. We have to have all the people out there screaming as loud as they can, saying, we can turn this around. The stuff that we struggle with every single day. Sorry, I'm soapboxing a little bit. But everything, these are lifestyle choices. Some of them we know about and some of them we don't. If we're not educated on some of these things and the ingredients and the trash that's being put in our food, and we're thinking we're doing healthy things, that's not necessarily our fault. But we've got to start screaming so people hear and people can learn and they can be educated and make choices that are their choices, right? I fully believe in self-accountability. And so when we know, we can still make the wrong choices. That's okay, right? But at least we're doing it from an educated perspective. And that's what I care about, right? Nobody's perfect. So anyway, I am, we have the opportunity to make some really big freaking strides in our health and our healthcare system and in natural health, and in helping to push this forward. So anyway, I am just super stoked.
I'm gonna join you. I'm gonna join you with that because I'm very much. It's so funny because I will put myself out there and say at one point I was in one camp.
Sure.
Because I was very much, my body, my choice. And then when things started changing and shifting from a female, a choice that females make, to then the entire world of you are being forced to do something that you may or may not want to do. Whatever is your choice is your choice, but you should be given a choice and not be judged for that choice. And the fact that one camp is still holding on to no choice, and the other side is going, we need to look at all choices, and we need to give everyone the autonomy and the sovereignty to have that choice. You want to get your kids vaccinated with the normal vaccinations that, good old polio and all that, do it. Go for it if that's what you want to do, but do your due diligence and research it. And that's my point, is the information has to be out there. And if you're reading something, and sorry, I guess I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox, but if you're reading something and it's like, you can't hold us liable, red flag. If they're trying to pay you or give you something for free, red flag. Look into these things. Don't just take a word, someone's word for it, that, oh no, but it's good for you.
Right.
Because it may be good for one, but it's not always good for everybody. And so you have to look at that and do what you feel is right for you. And so that, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I think it's really important. And the other thing I want to point out to you, Nikki, that's so important, something that you said, podcasters have now taken over basically for the media. So what you're doing, what I'm doing, what we're all doing, I mean, I'm little compared to what you're doing, and you may be, not as big as some of the other ones that were on TV the other night that hit 500,000 or a million, and it was crazy.
Yes.
But the other regular regular media, I don't even know what they're called anymore. I don't know what I'd like to call them.
Anyway.
Their numbers weren't as high as the podcasters.
No.
And I was getting much better commentary from the podcasters. And so that's where I was. I wasn't on mainstream.
Same, exactly. Yeah.
We all have to speak up. We all have to let our voices be put out there and our views. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Good stuff. I love it. Thank you. So let's do this. Let's just jump in real quick. So originally, Michelle and I had chatted, excuse me, and we were it's just going to be the two of us. And then when we started to do a little, brainstorming, she was like, do you have a client that you want to bring on where we can actually do a live session on the show? I went, oh, that's cool. And so Jen and I had reconnected for a couple of different reasons. And I was like, this is perfect, because you have, Jen, such an intense story and have moved beyond it for the most part. But what if, and this is kind of what, my thought was when I was doing my promo video earlier, was, if there's still, potentially lingering stuff, right? We could call autoimmune lingering. It tends to linger. There's still triggering moments and things that can happen. What if we're able to dig even deeper into that nervous system and actually start to shift it where those triggers are less and less and less? And so I thought, well, this is really a perfect opportunity. So this is really fun for me. I don't even know how much I'm gonna say. It might just be the two of them, which is totally fine with me. But let's start with you, Michelle, where kind of how all of this, how you created emotional liberation, which I love that. It's just so good. And yeah, let's hear a little bit about you and your story.
So Moksha Grace came about because I had what I would call a tower moment. You break down, everything has to crumble, and then you rebuild. And real quick background, stay-at-home mom, and then my kids were like, you can't continue doing PTA. We're in middle school now. Like, go get yourself a job. So went to corporate. I ended up going and working with the hospital that helped my daughter through her cancer journey. She was a cancer patient, survivor, at the age of 3. And
Wow.
I was passionate about advocacy and for the families, for the patients, for having the right? Don't tell me I'm allowed to visit my child.
Right.
That's my child.
Yeah.
And if she's here,
Mhm.
I'm here.
Mhm.
And so I'm now a resident of your hospital. And so I really got into what you would call patient and family centered care, worked my way up, was an executive for 10 years. And it was a beautiful 10-year career until it wasn't. Leaders, stuff happened, it was time to go, the universe kicked my butt out, locked the door, slammed it shut, and bolted it. And so as I was working on myself, on my journey and getting coaching, I learned a lot about coaching because I never really knew other than what executive coaching was, which was we're going to give you some executive coaching because now that you've been promoted, we want you to behave the way we want you to behave. And so that's what executive coaching was to me. I didn't realize there was this whole other world of let's actually work on you. And so when I started looking at emotional intelligence, because that was something that's very much pushed on us when we're in corporate, it was always about everyone else. And no one really helped us take a look at ourselves. What is our emotional intelligence? What on who we are? What are our triggers? It's okay that we understand our employees or the people we work with and their triggers. What about our own triggers and how we react to people? And so I got really curious about that. And that's when I started diving into emotional liberation. And that's actually what moksha, that's the definition of moksha, is liberation. And I want to help people do that with grace, which is why we got into moksha grace. So that, kind of gives you an idea of how that came to be. I've kind of jumped back into healthcare, looking at how our emotions are affecting our body. And, when Jen and I were talking the other day, I shared with her that as an advocate, I would go in the hospital and I was in the room with other patients and families when they were getting diagnosed and what have you, or they would be upset and I would be the one that would go in. And there was a lot of times, especially with GI, we talked about GI, where they would come in and go, oh, well, your kid's depressed. Well, what's going on at home? Well, why are they so stressed out? And back then, it used to tick me off because I understood from a parental point of view, because they did that to my own kids, that why are you calling in a psychiatrist without working through the medical part first? Let's make sure they're medically okay, and then you can talk to me about, well, how stressed are they at home? Now that I've taken a step back, that eagle eye view, if only they had actually communicated the why. If they had communicated of, we're going to do the medical tests, but while we're doing that, let's look at some of the emotional things that could be triggering a dis-ease in your child and you, whatever, in the body, and a reaction, and then let's see how we can fix that. Because if you're not treating a patient holistically, you're not really treating the patient. You're treating symptoms, you're treating signs, you're treating, whatever, but you're not treating the person, the being. And so there's so much that we're made of, right? And it's energy. And we have to take that into consideration. And so that's when I started getting even more so interested in health and emotions and how they all fit together.
Yeah. It is fascinating. I have seen, I'm not trained, I'm trained on, reading lab reports and numbers and, and digging, and which is all my favorite stuff to do, right? Is just really digging in, but was never really trained and not been trained on how emotional health plays a role. Now I'm trained to always look at trauma, I look at trauma, I look at history, we talk about it, and I can say, okay, we can talk about it, but do you have somebody that you can talk to about this? Because this is not, this is not me, right? But it goes back to, we all have our area of expertise, and we talk, and it's important for anybody who's out there to understand that we're not one-dimensional, and that we have to build our team. We have to have our people around us, our people who are the mental and the emotional support, but also, do you have your team of professionals who are your trusted professionals? Yeah, it's a big word right there. There are a lot of professionals, but but your trusted professionals who are gonna give you the best that they know. Which is, again, why I love this show, because the people who I bring on, I know are giving the best that they know. Data changes, science changes, everything changes, and that's okay. But find your people who are there to support you, but know that, and take this and really hold on to it, because if you're out there and you're struggling and you're not addressing stress, you're not addressing your nervous system, know that stress is not just outside stress. If you have symptoms, that's internal stress, and that creates more stress, and it creates more stress in the world, and your history creates stress potentially. All of these things come together, is energetic, it lives in the tissues, the body doesn't forget, and so we have to pay attention to, if we're not moving forward the way that we think we should, why, and what is it that we're missing? Do we need to look at the nervous system and what's going on there?
Exactly. And, and just to be very clear, like, I am not a nurse. I don't, I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to play one on TV. But I do read, and I do research, and I want to say intuitively, there's this gift that has opened up inside of me where I can kind of hear when someone's talking. I can hear between the lines. And I'll ask a question, and like, how did you know that? I don't even know how I knew to ask. And it just, but you have to get to that place where you can clear out all of the gunk to get to your actual gifts that are inside of you. That are inside of you.
I love that. So cool.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's jump over to Jen real quick, and let's just hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah. I always think, where do I begin? But because it can go back so far, and it can go back, a couple years, or it can go, even back to childhood. But anybody who's dealt with autoimmunity probably knows that it didn't start when you were diagnosed. You had things that sort of led up to that moment. But I would say, gosh, I think, was it 3 years ago now when I was probably officially diagnosed. I was diagnosed with the autoimmune disease, ulcerative colitis, and prior to that, I really had no idea that anything was going on. I was an athlete, so I was very active. The year prior, I had dealt with an injury, which I think also did contribute to the stress of that diagnosis. But so when I was actually formally diagnosed, it was somewhat surprising to me, because I thought I had lived a healthy life. I thought, I eat well, I exercise, I do all of the things that we're told to do to be healthy. So why do I have an autoimmune disease? This doesn't fit the description of my life. And, we talked earlier about, being able to advocate or, be empowered. And it's interesting for anybody who's had to be a part of that system, there is really not a whole lot of sense of empowerment, teaching me and helping me understand about my body and about myself, and maybe why I got here, and, how I can sort of get myself out. The moment I actually called Nikki, I had, heard about her before and heard about her work, and was after I had met with my doctor, and he sat me down, and I asked him, because every time I came in, I badgered him about, is there anything I can do outside of this, any different supplementation, diet, lifestyle changes? I mean, there's got to be something other than me just coming in here getting a biologic. And he told me there is no food or diet that could ever get you in or out of remission. And that floored me. It floored me. You know, even though I'm dealing with an autoimmune condition, I knew how important health and I knew how important nutrition was and the emotional component and lifestyle. And that was absolutely nothing they asked. They didn't ask me anything about what my life was like and what I ate and what I did. And, you know, nothing. That never came up, ever. And so, yeah, I left and I called Nikki and I never went back into the office.
I think they fired you. Didn't they fire you?
In some capacity, I think I was fired because they called me. They called me several times for a couple weeks because I refused to go back in for the biologics. And it was a bit of a leap. I mean, Nikki, you were there. You saw how scared I was. And I told you, I said, they keep calling me and they keep calling me. They're making me scared. Mm-hmm. And instead of empowering me and helping me find a way to bridge into how I want to treat my body and how I want to sort of assist myself, they called me. And I remember one of the staff left a voicemail and told me, you can't do this. You may think you're better now and you may think you're improving, but you're just going to be back to where you were. And I still remember that voicemail because it scared me. But
Sure.
also made me really.
Yeah. Well, and it is really scary, and it's not fair to scare you that way, right? I mean, it's not fair, and they have their own experiences, sure, but you can't go through life, you can't go through your job with blinders on and assuming that what you know is all there is to know, right?
Yeah.
On all sides, right? And so, I remember so clearly you going through all of these things and asking the questions and not understanding and being scared. I mean, I was scared. I was like, you know.
Now it comes out.
Well, I mean, there's so much knowledge and so much education in the medical system, and we know this about them. They're so smart.
Yes.
But you have to not be closed-minded, and we have to be open to knowing that there is potentially more than what we already know. And so, you know, if you are one of those people where you're like, okay, well, I don't want to make any lifestyle changes, and so biologics are fine with me for the rest of my life, which are going to keep me from traveling and keep me from living my life and doing all of these things, then that's your decision, right? Again, going back to, we make the decisions based on knowledge and education and understanding as much as possible. We can't know everything, but as much as possible. And so you just dug in. I mean, which was awesome. I mean, we talked every week for months, at least once a week, and it was digging in, and I got to learn stuff, and we both learned some things together. But anyway, awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just I realized how important that component is of empowerment, and that's what I felt like working with you, Nikki, is that you helped educate me on what was going on. It wasn't just about, this isn't, you know, you're sort of flawed and that's just kind of the way it is. You got to eat X, Y, and Z. It was, well, let's dig deeper and let's figure out why. And I think that's, you know, the intensity of me wanting to know those answers is maybe that sort of intensity that I need to learn to turn on and off that could also play a factor into my autoimmunity. But, you know, turning it on in this sense and helping me sort of, you know, get the answers that I want or get in the place that I want to be in, I think helped me improve. And, you know, anybody, like I said, who deals with autoimmunity knows that, you know, it's something that you have to be mindful of, you know, going forward in the rest of your life. And you can look at that from two different aspects where, you know, great, now I have to deal with something like this the rest of my life. Or it's now a friendly reminder that I feel like I have to myself where, you know, maybe I shouldn't push myself and do, you know, go here when I know I've had a long week, or, you know, maybe I need to dial back and I can't take on as much as I know I should, or I know I want to. It's not really should.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I consider it now almost a friendly reminder. Yes, it can be frustrating. I'll be the first to say it. It can definitely be frustrating. But I think, and maybe we should be happy that our bodies have this unique ability to tell us something, when something's wrong, where, it's a curse and a blessing, but I could have gone my whole life and never known and never got any sign or symptom. And, and then found out later when it was too late. Now I have an opportunity to have that chance to make a change in my life and my diet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating what some of these changes, and it's not easy, right? There are times that are just not easy, but you also are at a place where you have a little more freedom. You know what you can and can't do for the most part, and it's that's freedom in and of itself right there, is knowing how to work with your body. So often we think that our body's fighting us, and why is it so mad at us, and why does it hurt all the time, and why does it, on and on and on, when I fully believe that the body's doing everything that it knows how to do to keep us alive. And so what can we do, as we're sort of the outsider, right? Which is really weird to think about, but we're sort of the outsider. We've got this brain. What can we do to help our body, to support it in what it's trying to do to keep us alive, so there's balance and less pain, right? And less antibody activity.
That's such a key word, though, the balance part of it. And I think having this has almost taught me to ensure that I keep balance. And usually when I have any issues, because, I do have stuff that comes up and stuff that comes up, throughout, having this diagnosis. But let's be honest, I had those things come up before and I probably didn't even notice them. Now I've just been made aware of them. And now it's the sort of thing where, when I do feel like I have symptoms, or I do feel like I have something come up, I have to remember to slow down and maintain that sort of balance and try to bring that balance back.
Yeah. Michelle, were you about to say something?
Just so happy that the two of you are enlightening and educating others about the body's way of showing us what we need to address within. Because if we're not paying attention, and I always use the example of, the check engine light on our car, the more you ignore it, what is going to end up happening? Your car is going to, you're going to blow a flat tire, your engine's going to die, something's going to happen. It warned you, it told you in many ways. There was that little tick you heard from the engine, or the screech in your brakes. The more we ignore it, the louder our body is going to try to tell us and warn us. So the more pain you have, or the more hurt that hurts, and the more you get affected, the less you can do. And then the worse you feel emotionally, and then it's just this big cycle, this big pattern that goes on. And it's all because we're not listening. We're not paying attention to the big organ, the vessel that we're living in, that is telling us what we need to potentially do or know to make it better.
Yeah, fully agree. So let's do this. I want to make sure that the two of you have plenty of time together, and I don't even know really what that looks like. So let's just let the two of you jump in.
And I mean, we can talk about, whatever you want to talk about. Jen and I had kind of talked a little bit, and we talked a little bit about a lot of different things. So, Jen, what do you want to talk about today? Which part?
Oh man, you talked about the emotional component piece with family as well. That was a big one. We talked about our inner child. That's also a unique one as well. And then of course, my bread and butter is always, the empowerment in the medical industry, and the empowerment as a patient, because learning those boundaries, and learning, how to sort of push, and press, and not be afraid to do that. I think it's been huge for my healing. So that's something I definitely resonate with.
So sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was just thinking that I think one of the things, just to sort of take it back a little bit, is the understanding that symptoms are connected to emotions or vice versa. And so I wanted to make sure that, because you talked a lot about that, and so you can look at a symptom or a condition and you start to read off emotions, essentially, right? So I wanted to hit on that piece of it.
So, and that's what I wanted. So, which one from the other day that we talked about resonated with you the most that you would want me to kind of dive into a little bit, and we can
Oh yeah,
talk
feel
about
free
that.
to dive in. Yeah, we talked because we jumped on. It was so interesting, and for anyone listening, it just, I went into this with an open mind. I really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge previously, and so I found it fascinating that we looked at autoimmunity, and didn't resonate with a whole, with not a ton there. We looked at even my previous, I had a hip injury prior to actually having my autoimmunity issues. We looked at that. Oh man, but when we jumped on the colon, it was like one thing after another, and I thought, oh man, I feel like she's reading my diary. Wow.
That was the one I had marked, but I wanted to make
I know, I thought, oh, okay. We're gonna have to talk about this.
We'll have to talk about that one. Okay, yeah. So, the way that, and shout out to Yvette Rose, and it's an amazing book, and it's not just about getting the book and being able to look at the emotion or the diseases and read them off to your friends and family. Like that's, that's fun. It's cool. It's, okay. But you have to understand that then there's all these emotions that you got to process. Because now that you get it kind of dumped on you, like, okay, let's read through this, and you're like, ooh, that one hurt. Like, you just reached into my soul. It's kind of like when you go to Tony Robbins, love Tony Robbins, go for the weekend, get your soul ripped out, right? Everything's open, and then the weekend's over and you go home and there's no one to help you. And I have so many clients that are, well, what do I do with this information now? So that's my point, is we can always buy a book, and that's great, but unless you have, and if you can do it yourself, awesome. But if you need somebody to help you work through some of these issues that resonate, then you need to reach out to somebody. And that's always my point. So when we talked about colon problems, and this kind of links, it brings it all together to digestive, inflammation, infection, diverticulitis, polyps, it puts it all kind of in one column. But it's, you do not want to let go of past negative experiences and trauma. There's something inside of you where you're holding on to it. And that was one of the first sentences that we kind of talked about some different things, and we were like, well, wait a minute, hold on. You feel irritated and angry as a result of a past experience that you couldn't change or you had no control over, and you're still stewing over the unresolved issue. And we started laughing, right?
They have to say stewing. I thought that's great. But because you would tell me, like, I'm just reading the book, I swear.
Right. Because sometimes I read it, I'm like, oh, do I want to say this? And there's some other things in here, but so just looking at those couple sentences, we all could say that we're stewing over something, that we're holding on to something, but there's other hints, right? So when you talk about your hip issue, which side hurt more? Do you remember? Or which side did you hurt?
My right, yeah, it was my right SI joint.
Okay. The right side is our masculine energetically, it is our masculine side. What does that mean? Masculine energy is being organized, structured, right? Think of a guy in his garage, like the typical man, right? You got an organized garage, not the guy that just throws everything in the garage, but everything is organized. They like to build, they like to fix problems, they like to come up with solutions, right? That's a very masculine thing. And so when we have pain on the right side, it's a sign that we need to realign. There's something that's not aligned with our masculine. Maybe we're functioning too much from the feminine side. Maybe we just need to beef up the masculine energy that's running through our body. And so when we bring our body energetically into alignment, then, you know, hopefully the pain will go away unless there's something else tied to it. And so I thought it was really interesting because what was going on in your life at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was dealing with that injury, and you know, I was that whole side, you know, and actually it kind of flip-flopped between sides, and you know, while I dealt with that injury, I had to put on, you know, I need to get this done, I need to fix this, I need to stay on top of my PT, I need to do all of this, and it's almost like I had to tap into that masculine side of energy, which then it's interesting that you say that, because in the reverse, I have now left-sided colitis, so it's kind of, you know, going back and forth and going to different sides of my body. But yeah, I had to really hunker down, and you know, I think the success again of my progress that I had from healing that injury was because of the dedication and the work that I put into it. But I mean, to such an intensity that I treated it like a full-time job, where I thought there is nothing more important than getting rid of this injury and improving from it. And that's all that matters. And that's all that did matter to me at that time, which, you know, is a good and a bad thing.
Yeah. And so sometimes we can get so into something like that, and we want to control everything.
Yeah.
I want to have control over it. I got to do this, and it's got to be right, and it's got to be perfect, and I have to do this. And so now the masculine side is like, whoa, red flag, you know, alarms going off, and now we get injured. And it's our right side. And it's like, hello, you know, I'm trying to warn you, it's going to get worse. You know, there's something else. And so throwing in, when that happens, throwing in some feminine activity, right? And so what would you think would be a feminine activity, a more feminine energy activity?
I don't know that I know what that looks like on paper. Probably, honestly, more of my sensitive side, my caring side, my, you know, side that has a lot more compassion for people and compassion for myself. Because ironically, you know, I was going through, I did stem cell and I did PRP and I did all of that. When I actually saw the most improvement was when I let go. I had this idea of when I had to get better. I said, you know what? I'm dealing with this injury. I want to be better by the end of summer, because then by the end of summer I can do races and I can start running again, and wrapped my brain up in that. And finally, what I think was the breakthrough moment for me was when I said, I don't care when I get better. I just care that I make improvement, and I care that I enjoy my life along the process. And that's when that care and compassion, and almost I thought, not feeling bad, but having an emotional component to your injury and saying, you know, my body is going through a lot, treat it almost like a person. You know, I have sympathy for what my body is going through. It's trying really hard, and I can only make it go any further than it's already trying to go. And putting that pressure on myself didn't help. So that's what I considered my breakthrough, because within the same month is when I, you know, it could also go both ways, but mentally I just felt better. I just felt like I had removed this weight off my shoulder of thinking that I had to be good by a certain time frame, which is so arbitrary. It meant nothing. But, you know, it's like I let go, and that's when I actually started improving.
So you allowed yourself to flow.
Yeah, and that, I think when you talk about feminine energy, I think that's true, like that sympathy, that compassion, that caring, you know, that, you know, slowing down, not trying to meet a deadline, you know, I get it, you know, that's important, but at the same time, I think it was inhibiting me from healing.
running, going out in nature, feminine. That's feminine energy.
And that's what we did. We actually went on a trip. We went out and we went hiking. We were in nature. We went to Sedona and Lake Powell and all of that.
Anything creative is feminine energy. Anything where dancing, feminine energy. Sexual energy is actually helping you align the energy, so that's always a good thing to do too. But feminine energy is that flowing, right? You're just flowing. So if it's compassion for your body, I love that you said that. It's you're not pain. You're not pain. Your body is feeling pain. I have a pain over here, but you are not the pain. Just like you are not your diagnosis. And that's so important too.
That's such a big
and
one.
so, you know, when we have too much masculine energy, then that's going to, you know, cause a tightness. And so everyone's like, well, you know, what are some things, like what's a feminine activity and a masculine activity? And so I always bring up the one that's the most surprising to me, because and I kind of gave it away, but what do you think cooking is? Masculine or feminine energy?
Feminine. No?
No, you're right.
Okay.
What do you think baking is?
Feminine too? No? Oh, actually precision.
Bingo.
Because you know what?
Bingo.
Actually,
You have to
I'm not a
control.
great baker, to be honest with you.
You have to be more in control, and it's very scientific. You have to be on point. You have to be in control of it. You have to follow the ingredients. I learned that because I love baking, and I stink at making bread because I want to add more sugar, because sugar to me is just fun, right? Well, no, not in scientific baking, you know, way. It doesn't mesh. My daughter made this beautiful sourdough bread. She was tired. She forgot to add the salt. Didn't rise. It was horrible. She was so upset with herself. And then, of course, the next day she baked 4 beautiful loaves. If you miss an ingredient when you're baking, it messes up everything.
Yeah.
But in cooking, you're like, oh, I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic, and then a pinch of oregano, and I think I'll add some parsley, and you just kind of like, you're just going with the flow. You're feeling it, right? You're feeling it. You're just going with it. And so when people are like, well, but I don't understand the difference, and I'm like, well, that's a perfect example. Let's go there. And so do the things that are going to put you in the opposite state or bring you in alignment.
Yeah, this is such an interesting concept and topic, because I've actually heard this come up, you know, a lot recently about the feminine and masculine energy, that we live in a world that's heavily emphasizes masculine energy. And it's funny when I take the time to do things, you know, like paint. I love painting, or I love, you know, drawing, or, you know, just listening to music while I'm cooking in the kitchen. I love having days where I just get to make things in the kitchen and make some foods and snacks and so forth. And, you know, I realize sometimes when I have those moments, I say to myself, like, oh man, I really don't get these a lot. This is really hard, where I have to almost consciously implement those moments in my life, you know, being able to just blast music in a car and sing to it, and or, you know, turn the music on loud in your kitchen. It's just those moments I actually find are more of a rarity, because I'm having to almost tap into that masculine energy for work, you know, for school, for different aspects of my life, and, you know, create the list format. And maybe that's where couples go head to head, and I say, we don't need a list, let's just go in the store and just sort of, you know.
Well, and it's funny, because men are the ones that don't want to ask for directions, right? When you're going somewhere and they just want to
always
find
lost.
themselves. Right, but we're the ones that are like, wait, I want to have it all mapped out. And it's funny, but that's their feminine side, like totally kind of taking over and going, let's just drive and we'll find it. I'll figure it out. I can feel it out, you know. And then we're like, no, I have to have my app out, and I have to have the map on, and it has to direct. And like my husband's like, but we've been there already. And I'm like, yes,
but I want to know how long it's going to take, like an accident.
And I want to beat the GPS time. And so there's like all this.
I want to get there 2 minutes earlier to prove it wrong.
Right, exactly. And that's the masculine energy coming out. And it's like, whoa. You got to pull that back in. Because if we don't, and we don't find the harmony within, our energy is going to be off, and then it's going to cause dis-ease. And so even when and women are notorious for this, we feel anger, and what do? We might be at work or with our husbands or our partners, and we swallow it down. Mm-hmm. And then where does that energy go? That angry, red hot energy.
Yeah,
it bounces around.
Yeah,
it bounces around like a freaking a pinball game, and it just and it causes havoc.
Yeah, because we talked about that. I think I mentioned you after my diagnosis. I treated just like my hip. What do I got to do? How do I fix this? And I never actually gave myself a moment to just be upset about it. I don't even remember within the first few months even crying about it or even really getting upset about it. And it was the sort of thing that I swallowed it. I gotta just get this done. I gotta focus on this and put my head down and figure out how to get through this. And which it can be a good thing in terms of, moving me forward. But yeah, it wasn't until months later that I finally actually got to be upset about it and have that moment and feel the pain from it. Which is huge, which felt good.
And I was going to say, and isn't it interesting that when you actually step back and give yourself the time, how much time did you probably spend on that?
A day.
Versus how long had you been fighting it and keeping it shut?
6 months.
It's
hard. It's because I think that's a personality type too, where when a problem arises, I think I've learned that throughout my life that you gotta sort of get it done. You gotta focus on getting through it, and it's funny because when you and I chatted, I actually walked away later and I talked to my spouse and I was like, done this with everything in my life. Everything. I had the emotional moment where normally everyone got upset and cried, and I was like, okay, I gotta be the sturdy one here and get us through it and kind of, steer the ship. And then, then later I would realize, wow, I never got to have my moment to just sort of be upset about that and really just and just feel that and almost just acknowledge that it hurt.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and how that does sort of, I think, linger. And Nikki, you and I, when you and I were working together, I think that was one of the final pieces that I talked to you about, that I said, you know what, I really feel like I've have a good system with the nutritional component, but I think I need to work on the balance and the emotional side of things. That is the part that's really hard. And that's the part that I think is the most difficult component to healing.
And the thing is that the truth is it's only as hard as you make it. Yeah. Because the more you resist it, the harder it is going to be. But if you open the door and you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself today, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to just allow it to all come up. And there's grief in there too, by the way. Any chronic disease that we're diagnosed with, and the label that's put on us, there's going to be some grief because we may have thought that we were perfect or healthy, or that would never happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. I can't get hurt. And then all of a sudden now we're mad at our body. We're mad that we can't do certain things. We talked about your hip and how it affected the things that you could and could not do, which probably came up with some resentment that you harbored because you didn't allow it to, flow. And when we hold that grief inside, then what happens? So grief isn't just about death. Grief is also about losing what we feel was what we thought, what we dreamt about happening in our life.
Yeah, that we talked about that last time too, and grief is interesting too. You almost grieve your previous self too. And I mentioned that I grieved the person that I was before I cared about diet and nutrition. Although I found it so beneficial and empowering to know those things, but you know, it almost became somewhat burdening too, because I thought, man, there was a point in time where I could eat and do and say and be whatever, and have none of that filter through my brain and not even have to analyze that. And so, you know, when I actually had to think about things that I did or think about, you know, the things I do in my body, in my day-to-day life, it became, you know, that reflection time period where I started to think about, yeah, I miss the person that I could have been and the person that I was before this, but there's also power in the person that I am now. And so there's a grieving period that I think, yeah, it's a huge component of it as well.
Yeah. And there's parts of that person that is still there,
Yeah.
and you've just become stronger
Oh,
through the journey. And that's allowed you to also stand up for yourself, as we also talked about advocacy and, you know, not going the traditional route and doing the things that was best for your body. And that's why that's so important. But we have to go through some of the not great stuff to get to that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was the hard part I found too, is that we always talk about life on the other side and how beautiful it was once you've gotten through all the muck, but the muck is the meat, the part that actually tells the story. And I think there was one thing that somebody had told me a while ago, you know, if your life were a book and you were the author, how would you want your story to be written? And I thought that was really interesting, because I thought, you know, I don't want to, I want to be able to write this beautiful story of, you know, the journey. And it wouldn't be interesting. Nobody would read it if I said, hey, I got diagnosed and I got better the following week. You know, it's the journey.
Pages.
It's the journey that really sort of defines the story and define, and you have the power to sort of, you know, to define that. And I think that's, like we talked about, that empowering piece is so big, because knowing that you can and you have the ability, and having that comfort with that too.
Yeah.
But not being comfortable with not knowing either too is other. But actually if we could circle back, because I found it so interesting when you're reading my diary there. All the components that you got to, there was a few that you talked about, even family having similar issues, or having had sort of passed on that as well. And I thought, oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah. So yeah, we had read that, you know, because there were some things that didn't necessarily resonate completely with you, but you saw it maybe in your mom, or, you know, you heard stories, right? And so generational trauma, ancestry trauma, that it's true, like it's real, that is a thing. It is passed down because we're the same DNA, right? Our mother had eggs in the womb of our grandmother, and so therefore that was developed, and then we, you know, came to be, and so it is passed on. And so taking a look at that, and so if you're, and I love doing do you feel lighter, do you feel heavier when something is mentioned. So like if you told me that you had a headache, I would say to you, you know, ask yourself, is it mine? Is this mine? Is this coming from something that I'm holding on to? And if you feel lighter, it's not yours. If you feel heavier, it's yours. But a lot of times we take on stress from our family members, or it's something that happened to our family that's coming up and triggering us, and we don't know why, because we didn't actually live that. And so you can still ask your body, like, where is this coming from? Is this mine? And if there's no one around you and it's not coming from an outside source around you, then that's when we have to look at, look within. And I had conversations with my mom like, so what was my birth like? Like, were you stressed when you found out that you were pregnant? But yes, I was a big surprise. I was a huge surprise. And I have no problem saying that, but I was a huge surprise. My mom and dad were dating. My dad was dating something else. And there was a whole situation. And there may have been a slap across the face when he told, very, very traditional Greek culture. And you just didn't do that. But so that's how I was created. And there was this stress and this tension, right? And there was resentment and anger and unsure, and no wonder I had so much to work through. And so we have to look at what was happening, what was going on, and if your relatives are alive, go talk to them. Ask them some questions, not for shame or blame or judgment, but just to get curious about ourselves, because it's not just our medical records that are important. It's also that emotional piece that gets lost when the other people pass. And then you can't go back and look unless you have their diaries. And then you can. You can kind of, see where they are. But, we had talked about, the need to be needed and feeling important and loved and validated. And why was that coming up? And the childhood. Setting you up for your sole purpose in life as an endless series of hardships and suffering. And it's like, oh my gosh, let's just address that. And that's not what we're here for, right?
Yeah, we touched on that. My father was the oldest among all his siblings. And so he carried, I think, in some capacity, carried the weight of that. He couldn't be the one to be upset. He couldn't be the one to need or be needed. He had to be there for his siblings as an example and so forth. And that, at that time period, that was very common of the older sibling. And so, I think about that in terms of my needing to get through stuff. I can't be the one to be upset because I need to be there for everybody. When something happens, I think I start automatically thinking about how everyone else is doing except myself. And that's hard because then I sort of suppress my own feelings, my own emotions. And I find that my father used to do that too. My father had diverticulitis, of his colon. And so when we touched on that, I thought, wow, there's a lot of connection between that and, when you talk about this being passed down, there's so much truth to that. When we talk about genetics and so forth, we pass down coded information about our body into our genes and our cells so that future generations will know how to handle X traumas and it could be an intolerance to something, but we want the generation forward to know how to deal with that. And so it makes complete sense to think that emotional component is also going to be there because it wants to know what kind of atmosphere and what kind of environment it's going to be entering into, so it knows how to armor or handle or deal with that going forward. And so, it's such an interesting relationship that those two play together. And when we talked about that, I thought, wow, my father had to do that. And we also said we think of our parents in some way when we're younger, and we get older, we think, oh, they're just children like us too. They're still trying to figure it out, and they're still trying to deal with things from their childhood as well. So it's really unique being able to look on that and understand that too. I think, like you said, understanding your parents also helps you understand yourself.
And when you can take that step back and look at them, look at their surroundings, how they grew up, what are they probably dealing with, that we don't know about, and looking them as they're a separate human being, an energetic being, and we're also connected. And so if we're picking up on that energy too, and so we have to remember that too. So it's all connected.
It is all connected. And that's one thing that Nikki taught me more than anything else, was that it's all connected. It never does anything on its own just because it wants to, and that's what I had a hard time with. You know, I don't want to just completely shame the medical industry, because I think there's some profound work and some advancements and so forth, and time and place for everything that people in the medical industry do. But the component to me that was hardest was treating different pieces of the body like their own piece. But that's we have found that so much. Yeah, it is. And yeah, I think there's so much connection between all of it.
Yeah. And I think that it's important for everyone to remember too. I mean, working at the hospital, they're only as good as what they're taught and what they retain, right? They're not perfect. They're not machines, and we don't want machines treating us anyway. At least I don't. I don't want a robot coming up, but they're only as good as what they're taught. And when we go back and look at the things that they have been taught, even in the last 5 years, the things that have come out and the things that have been said, or the things that have been, you know, put in front of them that they thought they had to do. You know, I give them grace and patience. They thought they were doing what was right. I don't think anybody, well, there's probably some with ill intent. I don't think everybody was doing it just because of love. There was definitely some that were doing things out of fear, and probably some ill intent. But we have to see the good in people, and we have to remember that everyone, when we were born pure. We were born pure. And the things that happened to us, and that's what I mean by pure, is we were, you know, just these little bundles of joy, and we had to learn about pain and suffering and anger and lack and limiting beliefs, and all of that was taught to us or passed down to us. And now it's time for us to unlearn those things so that our body can respond to that instead of the fight and flight, instead of the trauma, instead of all of that. We have to kind of go cleanse and let that stuff go, which is challenging. And also forgiving, you know, forgiving that, whether it's yourself, that you were judging someone else, and letting go of control, and, you know, because that's another thing, you know, we can beat ourselves up, and I was so controlling, or I was so this, or I was so that, and I caused it. Just be you, and just accept all of you and who you are, and what your body is too.
Yeah, the acceptance. I think that's I do like that word, and I also have a bit of a qualm with it, because it's like, yes, accept who you are, but don't accept that this is the way life has to be.
Right.
Because I think that's an important distinction, is that, you know, accept yourself and accept the way you are, and accept your past and accept your presence, but also you don't have to accept, you know, I think these diagnoses, you don't have to feel that that's who you are. Right. And I think that was the one thing, and we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to be branded as my diagnosis. I didn't want that to be my identity. And I felt like for some reason it was my identity. You know, people I saw after that, family members, you know, would always ask about it. It was the first thing, and I know they did it out of love and care, but then, you know, I would think, why don't you ask about my job? Why don't you ask about, like, you know, my personal life, or, you know, other things that I have going on? There's so much more to me than this. And so, yeah, I think it's really a big component, is, you know, accept, you know, what is, but don't feel like that's what has to be.
Right. This is where I'm at. And now how am I going to respond to that versus, you know, the reaction of others, and love your body, love even your diagnosis, because no matter what, there's a reason for it. And whether it's to bring things to light that you can clean up within yourself energetically, so that down the road you're not passing this on, or you're not creating situations in your life that you don't want. And that's why this is so important. But there's a lot of things that we have to unlearn in order to be the healthiest energetic version of ourselves.
Okay, ladies. Yeah. This is so good. I have patients I have to go see.
We don't want to keep them. Got it.
This is so good. And I'm sorry, I really didn't want to interrupt, but I do need to wrap it up for a number of reasons. But you two are amazing. I mean, thank you so much. This was so good. I think it's so beneficial for people to hear that you can go through junk and you can get to the other side bigger and better, and still becoming the person you were meant to be, right? And building your team of people who you can trust, so you can continue to build and be that person you're meant to be. So good. Michelle, real quick, let everybody know where they can find you.
MokshaGrace.com is the best place to go, because from there you can get to everything else. But MokshaGrace.com, and there's lots of different ways you can get involved with me, and social media would be Moksha Grace Coaching.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jen, anything you want to wrap up with?
No, anybody who's going through it and is in the gunk of it, you know, right now, there's definitely another side. Don't let anybody tell you that there's not. You know, I know it seems like there's not in the moment, but it gets so much better. And I think just holding on to that is definitely true.
Cool. And I would throw out, just because I think it's really cool, check out Heart and Soil if you haven't already, just because they are looking to do, they're researching. This is why they're bringing Jen in, is for research purposes. It's really difficult to research nutraceuticals, and this is what they want to do. They want to get the truth out there, and so this is awesome. It's amazing stuff, and so I'm so excited for you, and congratulations. That's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
All right, and of course you can find me, tastelifenutrition.com. You can fill out a free assessment, and I will reach out to you. We can chat about it. You can also find me at Immuno Wellness in Cherry Creek, and then of course here every Thursday, streaming live 10 a.m. Mountain Time at the amazing KUHSdenver.com, and then we're uploaded to all of the podcasting sites, so you can check it out there as well. So if you know anybody who's been struggling, I would ask that you take this and you share it, because this is something that that people need to know, they need to hear, and know that there is another side, and things get better, and your diagnosis is not you. So, all right, ladies, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jen.
you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.